This is Audiogyan, and I am your host, Kedar Nimkar. Welcome to a deep dive into the minds of luminaries from the Indian creative world. Welcome to a brand new series of Audiogyan, Where Are the Designers? It's a 12-part series featuring few of the top influential design leaders in India, talking about their process of hiring, challenges in finding and retaining talent, and some tips for young designers to make a cut. I'm so happy and proud to announce my co-host for this series, Abhinit Tiwari. He works at Gojek. Hey, Abhinit.
Hey, Kedar. How's it going?
Good, man. It's crazy times, and I'm quite enjoying the kind of conversations we are having with these designers. At least my hiring skills have improved to a certain extent. No,
I know my conversation skills have improved a lot in the last 10 conversations. Also
Awesome.
saw the launch page for Jupiter. It's shaping up well, huh?
Yes. Thanks. Yeah. It's been a crazy ride. My first experience with a startup. So let's see how it shapes.
Who do we have today?
We have Vandana Abraham with us on Audiogyan today. She's currently heading the design at Atlassian. Previously, she worked at 247.ai, Cisco, Unimobile. So I'm excited because we have first time a designer who has more than around 20 years of experience in this space. She comes from a more organized setup than the hustling and the chaotic world of startups and mid-sized companies. So a lot to learn and discover. Vandana studied at NID, and thank you, Vandana, for giving your time. It's a real pleasure to have you on Audiogyan.
Hey, Kedar, Abhinit.
Hello.
Hi, thanks for having me on Audiogyan.
Yes.
I've been following some of the really interesting interviews that have been happening so far. So looking forward to talk about a topic that's been troubling us for quite a few years and close to our hearts. So yeah.
Yeah. Cool, but we have a small surprise round, which is like a rapid fire round. We intentionally don't share those questions beforehand so that it's just sort of a warm up. So we'll start with that.
Let's go.
Okay. So what do you look in a designer, aptitude or attitude?
I'd have to say both are kind of equally important. If you get great skills and an equally great ego, then sometimes that doesn't really work. So you want to make sure that you've got the right balance of an ability to do and why you want to do.
Super. Your favorite book on design?
Design for the Real World, Victor Papanik's.
Okay. Your favorite design quote?
Design dissolves in behavior.
Wow.
That was a mind-changing one for me when I realized design doesn't stay constant. It changes as people use it. So for me...
Yeah. Great. I think it comes from NID background because I interviewed Balkrishna Doshi and he said the same thing. It was really inspiring. Favorite designer outside India or in India? Anyone?
Oh, wow. That's a tough one. The most recent one that's coming straight because I just saw his documentary was Dieter Rams.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think there are just so many great designers. It's just which day of the week you're going to be asking me that question.
Great. Best learning you had from NID?
To keep learning, to unlearn what you've learned and learn how to learn again. I think that's what helped me move. I don't know if you're aware that I started my career as a textile designer.
Mm-hmm.
And then I moved into a completely different space. And I did start, my first few stints were with startups and then with mid companies and then with larger enterprises. So I've just found that the new things that keep happening in technology in the world, it's just fascinating.
Awesome. Now, these ones are pretty quick. Favorite font, serif and sans serif.
Where's Jaideep when you need him? I'm not a font fanatic.
I will actually rephrase because last time Abhinit corrected me. Favorite typeface rather than font.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah.
There's one that Jaideep shared recently, which I thought was quite lovely. Voyage. So it's quite a lovely, seductive one. I hadn't come across it before. I'm going to try that out.
Favorite color? I hate to ask this, but मैं बस 10 question fill up कर रहा था.
I was going to say, which shade of blue, huh?
Yeah.
Nay. I like yellow.
Okay.
I
that's
like it
nice.
because it's so sunny.
Great. Your favorite app?
Oh, the one that I'm using, favorite app. Right now, my favorite app, which I actually enjoy using a lot, is called Lose It. It's a calorie tracker, which I'm being very particular with since I'm having high blood pressure, so I have to sort of monitor my diet. But I actually enjoy using that app. So
Pencil and paper or something digital to take notes?
pencil and paper, reams and reams of books with notes.
Okay.
But actually, functionally speaking, I find that the ones that I capture on the digital interface are what endures with me. I keep referencing that again.
Yeah.
The ones I write in pencil and paper, it's difficult to go back and extract it and make use of it. So,
Yeah.
old
In
habit.
fact, yeah. I mean, the reason why I asked is because I was just talking to one friend of mine, and like they were just taking notes on pen and paper, as in like with analog way. And I said, hey, like these days I've started thinking on notepad also. Like it's so like after like 10-15 years of like constant usage, I think it changes patterns. Yeah.
I actually started using the Apple Pencil and sketchnoting.
Yep.
And I find that works better than notes because I'm able to take my thoughts and make a structure and kind of give it relationships and context, which I can't do just with words.
Yeah, true.
And it's better than pen and
Infinite
paper.
canvas.
Yes, absolutely. So
cool. Last one. Like we can see some sewing machine type in the background. What is it? Hand loom or something?
Yeah, that's a loom. That's a small sample loom.
Okay.
Which is a remnant from my past, and maybe it's part of my future. So
wow,
I like actually doing some physical craft and creation with my hands. So that's there.
Okay, great. I remember the second last or the third last of the last season was with Sujata Keshavan, and she has moved from NID, and she's moved from like digital and advertising world to now handloom. So and I think at the age of 45, 50 plus. So
yeah. Even Devika Krishnan went into looms also recently from ceramics. And
the lure of making something with your hand never goes away, right?
Never. And the other thing that's actually stacked up at the back is Lego, because I just love the concept of these infinitely reusable units that you can keep taking apart and then putting back together. So
great.
That's another passion.
Awesome. I think that were few of the questions for the rapid fire round. I know it's not like greatly hosted like a professional host ki fatafat question kar rahe वैसा नहीं है, but yeah, whatever.
This is great. No, I was saying this is very comfortable and great.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's too formal, means ki maza nahi aata.
You have to like it's uncomfortable taking pauses and thinking when people go too fast. No.
Yeah, and then it's like मैंने सही बोला था कि क्या? Though of course some of those, the first thing that was in my mind came out.
Cool. So let's kick this off. So to start the conversation, Vandana, could you take us back a few years to probably the first time that you had to make a hire? I know right before we started recording, you were saying you've been doing it for a really long time. So if you could take us back to that time, where were you and how did you go about it? Maybe even who was your first hire?
It's a great question. So I've got to go back 18 years. I think my first hire was in 2003. I remember that really clearly. It was with a company called July Systems, one of my first startups. And my first hire was a designer, Jaideep Sikdar. I wonder if Jaideep's going to be listening. He's still in the design space. He's a senior design leader himself now. It was my first stint as manager for marketing for a brand. I think I was leading brand, Marcom and brand design at that time. And things, 18 years ago, things were very different to hiring today.
Sure.
Right? You put an ad in the paper, said you're hiring for multiple different positions, and then you just started meeting all the people who came into your office and having conversations with them. There were no panels. There was I operated a lot on the kind of work that we wanted to do, which was print publication and design for it.
Mm-hmm.
I met this guy and he was the third person I met. He'd got some experience working in the Middle East, and it was a hire call after that first interview. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, come on board, and he could join, which was the other amazing thing. He could join in 3 weeks, I believe. So I'm just trying to think, when was the last time I had someone join in 3 weeks? It was definitely not in India.
Sure.
And what was the reason to put it in an ad? Because it was a publication, or it was there was no internet?
See, that's a really good question. 18 years ago, there was internet, but I think it wasn't quite as widespread for the audience we wanted. And we were looking to hire across the entire breadth of our business.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd taken out a half-page ad in all the newspapers. I remember the ad as well. It was like slices of oranges. It was called Think Fresh. And if you were thinking of a new kind of business to join, then you wanted to come and join this company, this startup.
Great.
And yeah, I recently ran into a candidate who actually brought in a physical portfolio. Right. I don't think I have seen that in a really long time. Right.
Yeah.
But so I'd just like to tie into that and ask you, like, how have things changed in a sense that, in a way that candidates, pitch themselves or, show their portfolios? Any one thing that stands out the most?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree that till you said it, I hadn't realized how much, but yes, candidates would bring in resumes and portfolios physically and show you the work because it was print.
Mm-hmm.
And their work existed in that kind of medium. The other thing that would happen is just the volume of applications that you get nowadays. It's just so vast, just the ability to process it and the number of, I think that funneling down to being able to decide who you want to speak. I don't think we've cracked that yet in a really good way. And I believe there's a lot of opportunity there because the system may be focused on things like what kind of design school did you go to, what kind of, how well did you do academically. And I don't believe those are all necessarily good indicators of being a good designer. It may be just some of the systems or processes that spit out structured designers. But there is a large talent pool of good thinkers who otherwise, and that's one of the things that we're thinking through. How do we better tap into that?
Makes sense. Also, there was the first question I think in rapid fire was, what do you look for, aptitude and attitude? And you said a bit of both, right? Recently, I was on Twitter and I was seeing somebody say that interviews are basically a vibe check, right? And people kind of try to make interviews into, people think that they're objective. They kind of come up with structures and practices and processes to eliminate bias as much as possible. But is that really possible? Have your views on this changed over the time? Like, for you, is it like good conversation means good candidate, or what do you look for?
I did that classic mistake, right? I was the only one who was hiring.
Sure.
So I did all the interviews. It was my gut that said I should take everybody. And for many years, it worked. But it's not scalable. It eventually gets to the point where you're looking at bringing a lot of people that you personally cannot interview everyone. And then you make bad decisions, right? You liked a conversation that you had with somebody, but then after they joined, the work wasn't exactly, or the person related to you didn't necessarily get on with the rest of the team that they were working with. So those are things that definitely make it clear that it can't be just one person's choice. It's not a one-person company. So we needed to have a panel, and that's when we started structuring. And this was about 12 or 15 years ago, when we started looking at having a group of people do the interviews and being able to have a debrief which gave you different perspectives. Of course, we initially fumbled through that. Everybody was asking the same questions in each interview. So poor candidate was like, I'm saying the same thing again and again and again.
Yep.
And then you get more formalized and say, okay, your panel is looking at these different aspects. And in the debrief, you come back and say, here's what each of us had to hear about. So I think that way, it's healthy to have different perspectives. I found most recently in the hiring that we do here in Atlassian, there's a very healthy way of looking at what the candidate brings as strengths in their experience, but also areas where they potentially would need to grow a little bit more. And the hiring managers provided all of that perspective so that they know, hey, this is additional investment that I need to make, but here's what the strengths that they bring in. So, can I trade that off?
Yep.
So you take a much more informed decision about who you want to hire.
Interesting.
I think that's evolved, but it's time consuming.
It is.
It does. It takes a village to bring someone into your team.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. In fact, yesterday I was interviewing one mid-career product manager, and I think he had given interviews, or he must be giving interviews for the last 2 weeks back to back, I think. He was just anticipating my questions and, is this okay? Can I take 2 minutes? And it was just I was just on the other side saying, yes, okay, go ahead. Nothing more and in fact, he was also saying that this is the question you would like to ask me, correct? Abhi pura auto suggest chal raha hai.
Yeah, you see a lot of folk post it online, right, on Quora or anything. If you're applying at this company, here are all the questions you need to, be familiar with. If you're applying here, these are the questions they'll ask.
Yeah. Cool. So, Vandana, how has it changed for you? Because you said you joined, you started with a startup and now at Atlassian. So, even in Cisco. So, can you share some processes or some insights from where you worked about how these operate in a bigger setup? Who is there a HR manager? Is it there a recruiter? How does the process overall work in a bigger setup? And if you can also highlight the pros and cons of both. There are certain places where you really have to hire fast and take a decision faster. But sometimes it takes a very important position. You need to really take informed decisions. So what are the trade-offs there as well?
Okay, there are a few questions in that, and I'm going to sort of address it in different places. Yeah. One is the process that we currently have. So just talking about, the amount of time, the number of different groups that get involved in hiring for a particular position. It's there are typically, for instance, in companies like in Atlassian, in Intuit, so Cisco, and I'm going to digress a little bit. My experience with Cisco is actually because the companies I worked in got acquired by Cisco. So I was working with startups and they got acquired by Cisco. So I haven't actually worked as a Cisco badged employee.
Okay.
All right. Just clarity.
Yeah.
So there's typically a recruiter who's responsible for every specific position that's being hired for. And that recruiter is going to receive all of that recruiter posts the position wherever, all the online systems and whatever other campaigns. And all applications eventually route in and get screened by that recruiter. So then the process includes, and now the recruiter does that in conjunction with the hiring manager. So prior to having posted the position, the recruiter and the hiring manager would have said, this is the role that we're hiring for. This is the business need. This is what we expect to do. And one of the differences between, what I've seen when we were hiring earlier in my career, and more of the startup scrappy thing is, we're looking at somebody in that position right now. What I see in the larger organizations is we think ahead. We think a year, we think 2 years ahead. And we say, here's the growth potential. Here's where the career trajectory of this role is going to go. At least 1 to 2 years ahead. So we're very clear that whoever we're bringing into that particular position is going to need to do these things over a period of time. So that gives you more of a sense of the potential that you're looking for. Whereas in the startups, we were looking at what capabilities you have right now to be able to hit the ground running. I think that's one difference that I've noticed. Not that the business doesn't have needs right now, but then we look at balancing that out through things like either contract work. So we have someone come in for a short period of time to do a particular project. Being a global company, we're also able to move work to teams in other locations. So we have some flexibility there. If we don't get exactly the right attitude, aptitude, and value fit that we're looking for, we look at how the work can get done in other means, but we don't look at, taking a call on someone who's not meeting those requirements that we have.
Okay.
Right. So then coming back to the process, you do the screening, then we have a panel, which is first there's a hiring discussion. With the hiring manager, there's an initial screen. So then the manager looks into in the discussion, understands what's the general cultural nuances that the person would be bringing in, what kind of experience they bring in. And then you have 3 to 4 different discussions, which include a portfolio deep dive. There'll be a design exercise. They meet with cross-functional peers they'll be working with. And then you get the debrief after that. Do you want me to dig into any of the specifics of these? You can go deeper.
I think this is broad enough. We'll get into depths later in the conversation anyways.
Yeah.
Sure.
And second part of the question was like any trade-offs you have seen in this much more organized way? I'm sure there must be something.
Yeah. So one of the things that does happen is time. It takes its time. So if you're looking at some work or project or something that needs to move ahead in the next 1 or 2 months, then that's not going to happen with this hire, with the position that you've got open right now. So you're going to have to look for other options to be able to get the work done. The second one is sometimes it doesn't happen in those 2 months. It'll go beyond a quarter as well, especially for some of the senior positions. I think both of you all are well aware that mid to senior level talent pool is really small. So it takes us a long time to hire, to fill those positions.
I wanted to sneak in same question that Kedar had asked from a slightly different perspective. I talk to a lot of young designers and I see a lot of them have this question that I'm just at the start of my career, and should I decide to, go for a startup? Should I decide to go for a bigger company? Right. And there's a lot of advice floating around also, right? So what is a young designer's trade-off in your opinion? Like, if there is one?
It's actually fascinating. Same question, neighbor of mine. Nowadays, you meet a lot of kids who are studying design. So I get to have that conversation very often. The trade-offs there, I think that is for them is, do I follow the cause that I want to work with? Or should I work with a bigger company and hone my skills before I do that? So that's a slightly different nuance to what you just said.
Sure.
In all of those cases, in all those questions, what I've believed is that in the beginning of your career, you have to practice and get your skills actually honed.
Sure.
I think that building that muscle memory, getting the right muscles to be working is actually the first thing that you need to develop. How you choose to use your muscles after that is your choice. But if you do it the other way, then you the skill muscle of design, whichever is the area you want to specialize in, it's much more difficult to learn that later.
Sure.
So I always usually say at least those first few years in your career that you're going to build some skills, those are the skills you're going to remember 10, 15 years later. So
yeah, that's fascinating because kind of makes me think of how in our schools we always sort of resent why we are being taught all these things at the same time. And we get told that, hey, you have to study all these things so that you know that these are the ones that you hate and these are the ones where you're strong at. And,
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Kedar, do you have a follow-up?
No, actually, before you jump into the skills wala question, I have one I don't know whether the question has any sense, but in like larger organizations, typically engineers are hired, and also there's a concept called as bench, right? You like TCS and a lot of other places have them, right? Do you think designers will ever have bench kind of a model because of the scarcity, or does it happen because of your hiring practices?
It's okay. I need to think a little bit about this one. Okay, so there's few thoughts that are sort of roaming around in my head with this. One is that the concept of the bench, right, is done when so a lot of services organizations that we speak about that run a bench is because they have a project today. They may not have a project tomorrow, but the project can come day after, and that's money that they'll not be able to accept if they don't have people to fill it. So the business requires a workforce to be available. So they're willing, you can balance your cost there between saying, I'm going to invest in bench, and then it becomes a question of, are design services in high demand? In which case, then there's a rationale for me to keep designers on bench and available, because I'll always be able to charge a premium. I always know that work will be available. But if you look at other organizations that don't work in that kind of a model, when you're investing in your own R&D, then you're constantly looking at saying, hey, I'm going to invest this amount of money to be able to build or address this kind of a problem, and I need these many people. So there isn't a concept of a bench there.
Yeah, I completely actually missed that part, service versus product. I'm just too much into the problem, I think.
So before we jump next, let's take a quick break. And welcome back to the show.
So I want to touch on something you said, Vandana, which was how difficult it can be sometimes to find talent in the mid to senior range, right? So on that note, first, what are some of the things, top 2-3 things that you find yourself looking for in designer these days? And what is your success rate? And if you don't find these qualities very often, or you find them hard, then who do you hold accountable for that sort of, right? Why are we in this position?
Wow, that last question is going to be a philosophical one that we'll all have to debate.
That's what I'm going for.
So let's what do I look for in medium to senior designers? Okay. So one of the things that we look at when we bring in senior design leaders is we look at bringing in that experience into your organization and being an accelerant for the team that you already have, so that everybody grows with that experience that's coming. So you're always looking at adding in more strengths to the strength that you already have, but it has to be a different perspective. So that the team that you've already got actually keeps growing more. If you bring in more of the same, right, your perspectives become slightly one view. I'm a big believer that the more different perspectives you have, the better the work gets.
Sure.
Right? So for me, already we don't, in India itself, we haven't had design schools as long as we've had engineering schools. So if you look at just in terms of number of years of experience that senior design leaders have in India, that's a very small pool of people who are either trained or worked in that space for over 15, 20 years amount of time. And each of them, and there is that much more business possible today. So there's definitely a shortage of that kind of talent in that space. And for designers who've had that many years of experience, they've also figured out what it is that they want to do in their life, and they're pretty much either already doing it and living it, or if they want to make a change, there's definitely a lot of options that they can pick from. So I'd say it's actually more about a design leaders market right now than for people who are trying to get them.
Sure.
It also touches a little bit on where do I think the problem is. I don't believe we'll have quite the same problem in another 20 years. Because I think we have a lot more design awareness. We have a lot more, just the access to design and good design that people have in things that they see, right? In applications, in products, in schools. All of that is definitely much more prevalent and much more widespread than it was 20 years ago. So I believe that in the next 20 years, there's going to be a lot more talent available. I think it might be a point in time that we're facing this problem.
Sure. I do find it very interesting these days, and sometimes I'm scared as well when I see some of the numbers floating around, how many designers we need and we will need. Somebody says 10,000 designers a year. Somebody says 20,000 designers a year. So yeah, thanks for the glass half full perspective there.
I actually did the modeling for that.
Oh, nice.
I think there was something like 300 designers a year. Formally trained designers graduating were between 300 to 500 a year about 25 years ago. Right?
Just 300? Okay.
Yeah, just that many, 300-400. And if you look at the number of them who continued on to work in India versus who left the country and worked outside, there was a substantial amount of brain drain also that happened then. Today, if you look at the numbers, I think 27,000 designers graduate across different design schools across India.
Sure.
It's a much larger number. But when you compare that to, I think, 30,000 engineering colleges in India, and multiply that with number of students graduating from there, I think the ratio is still not quite the same.
Sure.
But there's definitely more of a demand and acceptance of it as a career option, as a viable career option for people to choose. So
for sure. And the other thing, sorry Kedar, I'm going to take a bit of a tangent here.
Please.
Vandana touched on something I have to ask her. So you were talking about how important it is to have different perspectives, right? Like in a design team.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, like, what change have you seen in organizations and design in particular with regards to diversity? Do you find that, teams are more diverse now than they used to be? Is there anything specific where you're currently, you do there or anywhere you've been in the past to kind of consciously promote a more diverse?
Yeah. So one of the things, and first of all, let me speak about choices that I made when I was moving from company to company.
Would love to hear, yeah.
I wouldn't be very comfortable joining a company which had maybe an all-male management team. Because my question was, why isn't that focus actually, why isn't that shift happening? And if the company didn't have either a plan or an action plan to address that, if they weren't actively working towards it, then it was not important to them that there was diverse opinions right in the management level.
Sure.
So for me, that was a choice I was making when I was interviewing or looking to join any other company, apart from, what is the vision, how do they actually manage things? It's just the environment that I'd be working in. What was that going to be like? So I believe it's a very important decision when people choose to come to work in an environment that they see, if not just people like themselves, but they see a variety of other different people there to tell them that there is also a place for them. I think that's really, really important.
Sure.
So as much as possible, we push, and that's something we've been doing. I think most of the companies nowadays we see doing that. Atlassian in particular pushes very strongly to ensure that you have diversity of race, of gender, of orientation, on whatever axis that people choose to differentiate themselves, that they are able to see someone like them in the company, constantly being represented at all levels of the organization and having a voice. So I think that becomes really important. And interestingly, a lot of our policies and processes have also shifted to remove bias in the system.
Mhm.
So, small things like appraisal, your review process, right? Your annual performance review. The typical one is, you write your own review and then you give it to your manager, and the manager looks at it and then puts the comments, and that's it. So Atlassian, to remove that bias, they had the system which said the manager does a review at the same time and the individual does a review at the same time. And then they look at each other's reviews.
Mm-hmm.
Because there shouldn't be any bias in what's being done. It shouldn't be recency or anything. You're giving feedback regularly like this.
Yep.
And if there is a disconnect, then that is a flag that your manager and the report are not in sync on the feedback.
Sure.
So I think a lot of those processes are looking at systematically weeding out biases that could be, preventing people being treated equally, regardless where they come from.
Very interesting.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it isn't enough to just say, hey, let's bring in people from all kinds of backgrounds into your company.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have an environment which will accept them and let them be themselves, they're not going to stay. Nobody's going to stay.
Yep. If anything, that might make the situation worse.
Yes, exactly. So a good small one is, just ask everyone in your company, can you be yourself at work?
Mm-hmm.
Are you your whole self? Are you bringing your whole self here?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you trying to fit into some image that the business wants you to fit into?
Mm-hmm.
And this is specifically for design, or you're talking across the board?
This is across the board.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think in any way it's more important for design? See, it's important, baseline important for sure.
Mm.
Right? Anything about the profession which makes it more important?
So while we were studying in college, we used to question every rule that came.
Sure.
And as college students, your mantra is ki, if we are cloistered and if we are, if we're given rules and guide, things to work inside, then how can we be creative? How can we be free? How can we, think of the best things? Design thinks best in constraints. Okay, let's accept it.
Yep.
It actually really, really comes to its fore when you have constraints. So I think that wo wala nahi chalega.
It's art without constraints, right?
Well, that's a whole different debate, right? So in terms of saying should designers be treated differently from anybody else, I actually believe that everybody is creative and solving problems in their own spaces. So designers are people who have an understanding of all of those different materials and how they work, and is able to take so many different dimensions and analyze them together. But are we fooling ourselves in thinking that only we can do this, that architects don't do this? I disagree. I believe that every practice, everything has that breadth of problem that they're looking at solving. So everybody needs to be able to think in that way and have that space to do it. And tell me, where are your best ideas? Where did they come from? Did they come from other designers when you were working with them, or did it come from PM that you were talking to, or some architect that you were speaking to, or just even your junior software dev who was saying, did you know this could be done? And you're like, oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, the most exciting ones come from different professions, right?
Yeah.
Like civil engineering, architecture, music. Kedar keeps talking about parallels between music and design all the time.
Yeah.
So it makes a lot of sense.
I want to circle back to the question about the qualities, or actually it's in the middle of qualities in a designer and the scarcity of senior designers. And I personally have like a myth which you can bust right now, is that at these sort of established places, enterprises or MNCs, is there a requirement for like a leader or a senior or principal designer to be individual contributor?
Yeah, actually, that's an interesting direction that we haven't covered before here. The path of being an individual contributor, where your entire focus and purpose is in solving that problem for our customers or our users, right? Is one that I believe needs that full focus. And that is not the path of a design manager.
Okay.
Whereas in a lot of places, they do get conflated together in the perspective that as you get more senior, you both manage the team and you achieve that outcome. So you see that I don't believe there's one right or wrong to it. I think the business constraints may actually force one model of organization versus another. Right?
But designer by nature, they feel like getting their hands dirty, right?
Yes.
So that's the reason why I'm asking. Like, are there a set of people who just wants to be design manager, or their aspirations is to? It's like Harsha Bogle, like talking excellent about cricket, having never been on the cricket. So any insights there? Those sort of people.
Yeah. I can speak for myself, which is, sometimes I keep saying, right, I want to do something with my hands, but I'm not doing it. I haven't been doing this for the last 20 years. So why am I doing what I do today? I actually like to solve the problem within an organization that makes it more effective, right? You're looking at solving the problem of people. Or, well, not the problem of people, but you're looking at how do people become more effective at solving that problem. So maybe it's a factor of an area where the medium that I work with are actually with processes and people and helping structure teams and making clear what is the problem space and doing the analysis there. And that's how I work with design. And actually then the teams being able to go and do the design solving themselves is works for me. And I think it's a personal motivation for individual people. For some, it's actually being able to solve that problem, to just get into it and solve it yourself. For some, it's seeing people getting unblocked, which is the thrill. I think
brilliant.
Yeah.
No, brilliant. It's a great perspective to look at. Like, finally, you're solving problems. It's just that the scale is different. The type of problem is different. Brilliant.
And we've had people who've moved from one area to the other, right? Because you don't know how you like to solve problems if you haven't tried it. So try it. Try the path of, helping people get unblocked. And maybe if that doesn't work for you, or maybe, you feel that that's not an area you want to continue, then move back to the other. But then, do that within the first few years. After 10 years, you've pretty much become an expert in one, in that other way. So shifting.
I think I've been trying to do that. And the biggest problem for me is letting go of certain things. And like maybe we can take that as a philosophical discussion sometime later. But it's tough at the early time. You want to have that finish. You just envision that pixel perfection in all aspects because you did that to a certain extent. And then just letting go of certain landing pages.
That's a tough one. Yeah, that's a tough one that a choice that you have to make is, and at different points in my life, I've treated the same problem in a different way. So one is where you say, I know the answer to that. And I know how that thing should be solved, but my team is not actually seeing that. So should I tell them how to do it, or should I let them, try and figure it out themselves? So at one stage, I would have said, hey, here's where the problem space is, but let the team figure it out. A few years later, I was like, but why, is that the right way to teach them? And is it good for the business if you just let them struggle and we take that much longer to solve the problem? So then share what your experience and expertise has shown. But to do it in a way where it's not directive. And as someone had told me, don't hold the pencil in your team's hand and draw with it. You have to let them draw it, whatever it is. But how do you help them see through your experience I think that's the art of design management.
Interesting.
And Kedar, this is the problem of all the people in any craft. The number
Yeah.
of senior engineers I have had conversations with where they're reminiscing about the days that they used to roll their sleeves up and code, right? Like it's been like it's everywhere. Like I think every craftsperson rues the day that they let go of, hands-on stuff. But at the same time, I think a lot of people realize what Vandana just said. Right.
I think it will be exciting to let go if I think it's about the environment also, right? Where you are you pushed with like more exciting problems and more challenging problems, then you can let go of certain things. If the problems are small and solvable quickly, so you really can't let go. Also.
It's also the nature of of everything else. If you join a company and you're only one of 7 people in that company, you're the only designer. It doesn't matter whether you got 25 years of experience, whatever. You've got to just do the shit. You've got to do the work. Yeah? And then you build up the team and you get more folks joining, and then you get them to start doing things and picking up the pieces that they'll own. And
Speaking about mentoring, like what has been your experience with interns or internship in general? I mean, I'm sure for you it would be like a distant relationship because of the hierarchy or of the nature of layers in between. But anything which you want to share? Because like I've seen like interns also reaching out more towards the B2C companies and just trying 2-3 months gig. In fact, they are testing whether the company is fit for them or not. So, is there any insight there?
So, in Atlassian, we've just been in India now for 3 years. I think we've not even completed 3 years yet. So we've not taken in interns. We'll be taking them in from next year. But in my previous, primarily because it takes a lot of investment to bring in interns. To ensure that interns get the right experience, and you're kind of setting those you're sowing those right seeds, because then they're going to get into the grad stage and then they're going to join as a full-time employee. You really want to make your investments properly. In previous organizations, previous companies, interns have been absolutely invaluable for us, because they bring in actually such energy and such an amount of fresh thinking. You're completely new, completely untainted, unbiased, very very idealistic, right?
Sure.
And they're very, they want to change the world, which also grads want to do, which is great. How do we make sure that gets channeled, that energy gets channeled on the right problems, and not giving them the small problems? We give them the really big problems, the ones that you don't know how to solve. Because they come up with such amazing ideas. So we take interns from multiple functions together, and then have them work like a hackathon and work on things, and they come up with some of the best ideas. So I'm very bullish about interns.
Yeah, the outsider's perspective sometimes really is amazing things, right? They don't know what the constraints are.
Exactly. They don't know कि नहीं करना है, ऐसा नहीं करना है, क्यों? They'll come and do.
So when you were saying idealistic, I was thinking of another word which is going to piss off certain interns, which is unrealistic.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, come on, Kedar. When you were 18 and 19.
Obviously.
You have to be unrealistic. You can't change the world being realistic. Quite frankly, just let's get clear about that. How many of us are realistic? When were you realistic in your last gig, in your last project? Were you being realistic, or were you just being idealistic?
Yeah, idealistic.
You have to do that.
That's a classic debate between like a engineer and designer, or engineer and a PM, like a designer and a PM. Yeah.
It's one of the things I used to tell my teams earlier. If you've chosen design, you're going to be unhappy, right? Because you always are thinking of how much better things could be, and you're looking at what things are today, and you'll always see that gap. So just accept that you will live this thing that you have chosen, this path that you've chosen in design is going to constantly have you looking at the stars and thinking ki wahan jana hai. It should be like that, and today it's not like that, and we have to keep making things better.
Yeah. I don't remember the person who wrote this line, like Leo Tolstoy. I don't remember exactly, but the line was, what if she says no? And what if she says yes? Yes. So, yeah, the yes has like all the dreams in it.
Like I have to make a conscious effort to, every time I've gotten feedback that every time you open your mouth, it's a customer problem.
Yes.
Right? It's like, are there no customer successes? I have to make a conscious effort to find some of those to kind of keep things balanced.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
Hey, let's take a short break here. And we are back.
I want to ask a different question. You also mentioned it briefly, right? Like that you're working on making the organization itself efficient. I was talking to a friend some time back and we were discussing that, hey, if there are two companies and they keep making their product more efficient, over a longer term, it will be the efficiency of the organization itself which becomes the differentiator. So why I'm asking this is like for designers, a lot of designers these days, right? Software design is the thing, right? Which most of us do. But what are some of the other areas of impact, right? Which designers can own within organizations that you see coming up? Because fine, we do interfaces, we do all of those skills. But in the medium of people and processes, as you very well put it.
Okay, yeah. So I don't know if you've run any podcasts before, if you'll have covered service design as a practice, as that
much.
area, right?
Yeah, no. Actually, not. I'll do that.
I think that touches on the point that Abhinit was talking about, which is as you look at solving the customer experience problem and you look at what that journey looks like, a lot of those pain points are created by inefficiencies in your own system. Inefficiencies in your process, in the fact that you may have a manual process instead of an automated process, in your supply chain, anything at the back end. So all of that needs getting optimized so that you can deliver consistently better experiences to your customers all throughout. So whether it is, you're giving them and the classic one is whether you're selling them a car or a bike or a physical product, but then you've got to think about how does it get serviced? How does it get, what's the ecosystem that exists if it stops working, if you want to buy accessories, you want to buy parts around it, the apps that work on it, that entire world that is built around your product, that world of that service, all of those together becomes that customer experience. So every touch point has opportunity for design.
Sure.
And similarly, within your organization, you have opportunity for design there. So for instance, we were working on a project related to the candidate experience, which is what is it like when someone applies to an organization and joins your team? And what's the journey they have inside your company?
It's a design problem.
It's a design problem. That has, people are actually working on solving that problem, redesigning that process, redesigning interfaces that make applying for a job easier. Today, for instance, if you look at how are the different ways in which you fill in a form for a job application, whether you fill it in 3 times, you just upload your resume and it automatically captures all the key information. Does it let you know which stage of the interview you're in? There's so many areas that you can get better at. So yeah, it's...
Now tying this back to hiring, because otherwise Kedar will be pissed off at me.
No, please. No.
But tying it back to that, so like looking at this, this requires a different set of design skills, right, than typical software design does. So looking at design talent in India through this lens, right, from the lens of what would we need or demand from designers in say 10 years. And you've said this before, but do you still feel like the glass is half full, that and you'd know because again I'm assuming you're in touch with the academic side of design as well.
Yeah.
Do you think we are on the right path?
I don't see enough emphasis being put on user-centric design, on understanding the user. I see a lot of emphasis being put in a lot of places that teach design on the skills you need to execute a design, which means, you're learning Figma or whatever other tools of executing software design. But really focusing on what problem you're trying to solve, I don't think we're doing that enough yet. And when I said framing the problem and user-centric design, and I believe we don't do enough about analysis and synthesis when we're collecting research. So being able to collect the research and understand our users truly, what are their needs, and from what we've observed through the research, to be able to do a good synthesis of that information. I have not seen that skill set.
Sure.
I've seen that in very few people, and definitely not out of college.
Sure.
Comes out of experience.
Yeah. So basically, I would agree with that. Like, in terms of aspirations, I see a lot of people who aspire to design killer, customer, or as we say, B2C products, right? Or they want to make the next viral app, right? But I don't see a lot of aspiration towards, solving these kind of problems, right? Come and make my recruitment experience 7-star, or come and help my sales team, get to a TAT of 1 hour instead of 7 days on that process.
Yeah.
Right? So how have you seen aspirations change for designers over the years? Because this is just, I think, as you said earlier, this is a moment in time. But
that's an interesting question. It would be inaccurate to say that there has been no change. But if I look back from 18 years ago, the designers that I used to speak to, there would be some designers there who truly felt the pain that the users were going through in whatever form. And they were really trying to change that. And there were others who were like, okay, this is the problem space. And they were brilliant at creating the right quality of product to be shipped. I think the same still holds true today. What I would say right now is it's even more fragmented, because there's so much of specialization that there's one team that's going and doing, just the research and doing the analysis and synthesis, and there's another team who's doing kind of this area, and there's another team who's doing the design of the support. So the challenge is today is how do you bring all of them to start seeing the same picture or to see the same journey?
Sure.
Whereas 10 years ago, one person would be doing all of that.
हाइपर स्पेशलाइजेशन
हाँ मेरा एक कोई म्यूजिक का ट्रैक वापस आएगा तो I don't know whether this will fit here naturally. Somehow I see those two dots connected. So I was trying to learn flute and my guru said that यार पहले ना 20, 25, 40 साल, and he comes from a very traditional guru shishya parampara. They said like first 30, 40 years you just master the craft. Like रात को 2 बजे भी उठा के like हंसध्वनि बजाना है तो you should be able to do it. But after 40, 50 years of constant riyaz, then what is the rag's true emotion that you comprehend and that you want people to understand? That starts coming out. So if I draw this parallel to our 20-year, 40-year profession, I think we are possibly in that horizon where we'll start, we'll end the Figma skills and we'll start thinking of the users. I'm positioning like a positive side of things, but yeah, I see the trend of specializing skills, but truly solving problems. I think we are still in that zone of dhanda karna hai, paisa banana hai, and then hopefully we'll have a shift in the perspective.
There's also a movement towards point that caring about your users or finding that user problem is actually a good thing.
Yep.
It doesn't mean that you're not, that you have to only look at where money can be made. I think there's more awareness now that if you focus on the user and you solve that problem, then money will follow. And I think that's kind of giving a little bit of impetus to this, because the experience is now becoming the differentiator to so many things. Not becoming, I mean, became
It is.
became. It is.
Yeah. Abhinit, do you have anything? Because I have like this last question. Actually, it's the second last question because Vandana spoke about the money part. So we'll conclude there. But before that, you want to just...
Nah, I'm good. I think I covered all my threads in between the other threads.
Cool.
So
Yeah. So Vandana, this incentives for designers. So we spoke about aspirations, but on the other side, where we are hiring, we have to possibly give the right incentives, set the right culture in the ecosystem itself, right? Design ecosystem of India. You have seen any pattern of struggling to give the right incentives because of the enterprise setup or like a MNC setup? I mean, there are a set of people who just want to work for Microsoft, Atlassian, Apple, and like big corporations in general. And there are certain people who just want to, and designers, not people, just general designers who want to make some quick money in like next 3 to 5 years working in a startup. You have seen any patterns, some observations?
Let me just speak a little bit about the folk that or the environment we create in Atlassian, because that's been kind of the last 3 years experience that I can speak to. We talked about looking for people with attitude, aptitude, and kind of a values fit with the organization. So for the company, for Atlassian, we're very strongly values driven. So we believe that everybody who joins the company is actually, once you're part of Atlassian, you're driven by the same values. You don't want to screw the customer. You're part of a team that's working together. You drive change that you believe in. So what happens when you bring in people belonging to the same value system is you have to look at incentives that look at the whole person. So it's not just the aspect of the compensation, but it's also things like giving them an opportunity to make a difference in the world. So you have volunteering opportunities. So part of your benefits, if you call it that, is 5 days of leave where you volunteer and you give back to the association. You can be part of non-profit organizations as part of what the company does. So the company has a very strong social charter that it invests in. We look at innovation, where you want, if what's motivating you and what drives you is creating something new, is surfacing new value, then you have time that's available to you through the year to work on innovation projects. If it's going to be something related to your own flexibility of work, because we're talking about so many diverse people coming in from different backgrounds. Some have carer duties, some have young kids, some have older parents that they're looking at, some want to give some of their time, like we said, to charity. You want to work flexibly around that. We provide that option also. So we look at the whole individual and each person's motivations and what do they look for. So I think in a way, when you look at incentives in an organization, it's that awareness and understanding of what drives each individual and being able to provide that to them so that they're really inspired to keep working on those problems.
Interesting. You took a very different take on it. Yeah, I love it.
it's a very 360-degree take.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. I think we'll wrap with one last question. I know there's I want to pick your brains more with a lot more nuanced questions, but the theme is since hiring, we'll focus to that. You want to give out any message to young designers based on your observations regarding maturity, regarding wider exposure to design? Because these days there are a lot of self-taught designers also. In fact, me and Abhinit are self-taught, not from a design school.
Yeah.
And personally, whoever I have hired from non-design background, they are more hungry to solve problems in the recent time, right? So not generalizing, but I've seen some personal patterns as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, with your rich experience, if you want to just give some tips for young designers or even senior designers.
Yeah, sure. I think what I found invaluable and it would have been really helpful to have known this when I was starting out is, for you as a designer, you have to understand that context within which you're designing. It isn't that problem you're given. You have to get broader to understand the market. You have to understand what are the business factors, what are the people factors, what are the social factors around that problem space where you're designing. If you don't, your design will not be successful. I will be very clear. You have to understand that. The second is there are 2 time frames that your design has to work in. You have to optimize what's happening right now, because when you're doing your design, something already exists. So optimize for whatever people are doing right now. They're already in pain, make it better right now. And you design for the future, but don't do only one. Don't only design for the future and leave your current customer hanging. That is just so unfair to the business, to those people who've already, bought your brand for doing something. So optimize for the present, design for the future. And then I've said, know your users, go out, meet them, live those experiences, try everything. If you don't get to understand the breadth of experiences that exist, how can you design for the different kinds of people who are going to be using your products? You have got to know your users. Yeah, and probably the last one is, I think you start getting used to being uncomfortable with, different challenges that will come to you, with other perspectives, work with other designers. I think this is one thing that may have changed. In my time, people worked very individually. 20 years ago, each designer was an island. But today I see, and I'm very thrilled to see such a lot of collaboration. Designers work much more closely together. They're much more comfortable sharing their ideas. And I think that's a really positive trait. So if you're a young designer who's doing that, great, continue it. If this is my work and my work is good, I think you better start being a little uncomfortable with getting more views, because it doesn't matter if your work is good or not. It has to be whether that's better for your users and for your business. So, yeah.
Great. In fact, Abhinit talks about comfortable with ambiguity a lot.
Yeah, that's my number one thing to look for.
Yeah.
In fact, you spoke about context, know the user's context. I think I would like to end with one quote by, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Eliel Serenin, and which I've been using in my bits and pieces here and there, which is always design a thing by considering it in the next larger context. So like a chair in a room in a house in an environment in a city plan, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So it gives like a much more wider perspective.
That's lovely.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Vandana, for giving your time. It was real pleasure and honor talking to you. And thank you for sharing such brilliant insights. Thanks for listening till the end. Currently, I'm heading the design at Jupiter.money, and we are hiring at all levels. Visit jupiter.money/careers. You can follow Audiogyan on Instagram at Audiogyan Moments, and visit audiogyan.com for more Gyan sessions. You guys want to plug anything? Is Atlassian hiring? I'm sure Abhinit will have like a fumbled one, but yeah.
We're constantly hiring. So we've got positions open all the time. Atlassian.com/careers. Head to the India site. But now that we've got more work flexible, you can look at positions available in other geographies, which you could do from India if the time zones overlap.
Abhinit?
Yeah, I design at Gojek, and Gojek is also hiring. You can check out all the openings at Gojek Design on Twitter. If we keep posting stuff there and some other interesting stuff.
Cool. Thanks a lot, guys. Yes, bye.
And that's it from today's Gyan session. For show notes and more Gyan, visit audiogyan.com. If you like this podcast, please don't forget to check our other interesting podcast on IVM Network. You can listen to us on IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or any of your favorite podcasting apps. To stay tuned, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at IVM Podcast. And if you wish to connect with me, I am at Audiogyan Moments on Instagram. Until then, take care.